We'll call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Dan has an update from RSU board. Anybody else? Yes? Okay. Motion then to approve the agenda with that addition.
So moved.
I didn't see you there.
Further discussion? All in favor? Public forum. Anyone want to bring a matter to the attention of the board that we are not already slated to discuss on the agenda? Nothing? Move on. Minutes of August 14th, 2017.
I just have a question where it says up at the top, MLD Library, 7 o'clock, and yet item 1, we called it to order at 6:30.
Yeah. Needs to be adjusted to 6:30 respectively.
Any other corrections?
Jeff will be here soon.
Second.
Oh.
All in favor? Any board reports? Dan?
RSU school board meeting of Monday, August 21st. Let's see. So the first thing they started off is just a quick presentation, stated that occupancy permit is coming very soon for the high school. That's looking pretty good. Consent agenda items. Resignation of Calvin Hatfield, Kennebunk High School English teacher. Resignation of Stacy Knapp, Kennebunk High School English teacher. Nomination of Karen Alamo, Kennebunk High School counselor, $44,005. Nomination of Susan Thune, Kennebunk High School .5 English teacher, $23,950. Nomination of Jennifer Lee, special education teacher, $40,448. Nomination of Renee Doucette, Kennebunk High School English teacher, $58,832. Under new business, they're doing a collaboration with the Wells Algonquin High School for the boys hockey team. They did a co-op with Biddeford for 2 years, and last year was the last year. They've got very low numbers, so they're working with Wells, and they're going to combine it with Wells for the hockey team, so they can have hockey for the kids. Committee reports. Theater manager, they finished the job description for the theater manager for the high school, and they will be ready to present a candidate at the next meeting. Teachers and drivers contract negotiations are due this year, so that will be coming up very soon. Finance, Velma updated us on finance at the last meeting. Over at for the facilities part of it, over at the Sea Road School, painting and carpet replacement is going on. There are some drainage issues that they're working over at that school. And let's see, policy, they had a whole bunch of policies that they did first readings on. I'll just quickly go through awards by Board of School Directors, board relations with media, board communications with staff, board members' freedom of access training, certification of completion of freedom of access training, school board use of email and other electronic communications, school board meetings, executive sessions, executive session law and rules of order, minutes of meeting, broadcast, taping of board meeting, and administering medication to students. Most of these, there were very little changes. None of them, the ones that they did changes, none of them really had any substantial changes. They were just correcting some language a little bit here and there. Those all got approved for the first reading. Second readings for things that were done in June, school board self-evaluation, board members' conflict of interest, and bidding purchasing requirements. Those were all approved. Let's see, school liaisons, they talked a little bit about high school sports have started. There was a update that was discussed about the online school registration, especially here at Mildred Day School, is working very, very good. And let's see, update from the school board, none. From the superintendent, I guess they had Google in to do a presentation for the Google Docs. That went over pretty good. They're doing an admin retreat for 2 days. Kindergarten Jumpstart, they had 58 kids in that. I thought that went very well. And they're still looking at pre-K exploratory, that's still going on. And they're in discussion with Bedford and Dayton to, I forget which grade, but to kind of do a cross-country event with them, to do cross-country with those kids. And we adjourned at 8:05.
Dan, any questions by the way? Okay, moving on to the manager's report, beginning with the status of the fire station.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in your tables tonight, you'll see on the top, we surfaced and identified the bills that we're going to be paying. They're part of the whole warrant, but we just singled them out. We have some work on the grounds that we're completing now. Material brought in, the Public Works Department spread it and reseeded, repaired the drainage around the building, put additional stone in, drainage. It looks very nice at this point. The inside is coming along. There's just a couple things left to do on the inside. And we should be wrapping that project up. Probably Jason will give us a better idea when the painting inside will be completed in the kitchen. But other than that, I think we're pretty well done. Everything else is done to the outside. At that point, then we'll collect all the payments that we made, factor out the ones that are not related to the accident in general, and submit those to our insurance company to get the final amount of money owed to town for the work that's done. So I would suspect we'll have everything done by the end of September and get all that done. So looking forward to that.
No, more or less, there's a couple of overtures. One's already been paid for on the side, obviously. The other, Keith and I discussed, with the outside lighting, emergency lights over the doors. A lot of them were deteriorated and rotted when the signs took them off. So he and I discussed replacing them with new LED lights. Which was, again, was pretty short money, but it made sense to do that. That's pretty much it.
Has any discussion gone on about putting in some type of a edge or any type of a barrier on that corner of the road?
Yeah, I've asked the town planner to provide me a sketch plan of some shrubbery and tree work that we can do there to sort of have a little more protection. So once we get that done, I'll share it with you folks and take a look at it. The other thing that we had to do was identify where the actual septic system was. Phil was very helpful in identifying that for us, and making sure that we don't really approach it with any holes or anything like that. So it's moving along.
Dangerous dog.
Yes, I'll give you an update where we are, but first I'd like to recognize that Mr. Dumont, the gentleman who was injured from the dog, is here this evening. And if you want to ask any specific questions that he may want to express some things to you, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to recognize that he was here.
Is there anything to add, Mr. Dumont?
Mr. Dumont, yes. Live at 815 Alfred Road, right across the road from Mr. Labby's truck facility. And we moved here in June of 2013, and lived in Saco before that. And I was riding on the bicycle in Saco on the Eastern Trails for a period of time since it was open, and then here, ever since I moved here. And it's a beautiful facility. And one thing we don't want to do is destroy the mission of Eastern Trails. It's a great wild facility and a lot of people use it. But I do share Wilma's vision. If it wasn't me, it could have been a little person. And that would have been disaster. My vision is that we want to get rid of the dog. I looked upon him as a terrorist with a dangerous weapon. That's what I look at him as. If the dog is gone, how do we take care of the terrorists? If there is a better solution or more permanent solution, I think we ought to pursue it. Meaning, we want to know what the psychological profile of this person is. I mean, is he, looking at all of his history, he's not a very stable person. He has challenged the town in that, saying that if you think you can get rid of my dog, try it. You know, he's challenged the town and the sheriff to do that. Try to get my, and he's totally against it. And I see the problem is you don't want to eliminate a section of the Eastern Trails from its usage, but it is not used by a lot of people because of his activities. So first thing I think is to get rid of the dog and see if we can come up, I don't know if the state can come up with a psychological evaluation. That area, I don't know how you can do that or if it's doable. So that's my input, my vision. Get rid of, see if we can neutralize the terrorists that we have that is attacking some of our people on a public facility. And I thank you people for the ability, for listening and acknowledge all of the people in the town have been very supportive, compassionate. The fire department gave me a ride to the hospital. So, and the sheriff was there, took down information. So I don't want to go against anything the town is doing because they're going in the right direction, but I think it should go a little further. It's just that's, incidentally, I'm doing okay. I've been through quite a few towns, the wound clinic 4 or 5 times, rabies shots, grafting. I should have probably either last or next to last appointment with the graft people in South Portland. Then I go back to wound clinic and probably they'll say, okay, the graft is working. That's about all we can do for you. And from then on, it'll heal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Where are we with the dog?
I believe we have a court date in September. Our effort would be to get the dog removed from the owner. I believe that the ACO is also trying to get a voluntary removal of the dog as we speak as well. I haven't spoken to her this week, so I'm not sure. how our efforts are there. Right now, I've been encouraging people who have had any incidents on there to contact me. I'm putting together a chronological order of events that have occurred over the past several years, of events and activities and injuries that have happened on the Eastern Trail. And I'm hopeful that our attorney can take that information to the court and provide some sort of history of activity so we can try to prohibit this gentleman from ever having a dog again. I think that's the issue the underlying issue that I've seen. In Mr. Dumont's case, that's one dog. I know several years ago he had another dog that also had the same type of activity on the trail. So my effort is to get the dogs removed and not to have him have any further ownership of any. So I just encourage anybody who does have any more information on that to share it with me, and I'll put it together in my list and share it with our attorney.
Is this dog quarantined after?
He was quarantined for 10 days in-house.
He's out.
He's out.
I'm back on the property.
He's on the property. Yep. He never left the property. He was quarantined
He there?
in-house. Yeah.
I'm not sure, Mr. Dillon, how we can address the issue that you raised, at least this board can, in terms of, I'm sorry,
Yeah, he can't.
can hear?
Yeah.
Right, that's the whole new.
That's exactly right. I'm not sure what's in the province of this board to head down that road, but I hear what you're
Hear
hearing.
about if you don't, what's gonna happen.
Right. Mhm.
We had discussed last week about closing that portion of the trail. Has there been any discussion with the Eastern Trail Alliance or whatever it is?
I had a conversation with the executive director, but it was related to her sharing information with me. We didn't talk about closing the trail at this time.
Signs? We had also talked about signage too, right, or
Yeah,
something?
even a sign up there that said,
Yeah, that
"Very
was-
dangerous
That
dog."
was provided to the Eastern Trail folks. Hopefully they may exercise that option, place a sign.
Okay, moving on to, notice of violation to Du Bois.
Yes, yeah, last week, the board voted to send a notice of violation, and after the appropriate time, if nothing has happened, to indicate action against Du Bois, for failure to adhere to the consent decree that was signed by the town and the folks. Once that was expressed, as you well know, I notified you all, we received a FOIA request from Du Bois for a bunch of information relative to emails, letters, activities that this board, the planning board, our administration, both the planner, the CEO, myself, and our town attorney may have been having in reference to this. I put that information together, having the attorney look at it now to ensure that anything that needs to stay private will continue to stay disclosed. So once that's done, I will release it. I've reached out to every member of the board as well as members of the planning board to ensure that if there's anything out there that I need, that they provide it to me and I make sure that we'll disclose it to them. I think it's gonna go fine. I mean, based on the information they'd asked for, I think I pretty well got the information, the emails. Generally speaking, I think it was more electronic, just me providing information to you, other than decisions being made, obviously. There were none of those until your executive session, until we came out after that. So, other than that, I think we're moving along, so I'll keep you apprised. I know that they filed an application to the zoning board of appeals. They're looking to schedule that now. So as soon as I know that date, I'll share that with you folks as well. Their primary argument is that, and I think you know this, is that we as a community gave away our individual local rights to review their project. And I don't believe we gave that away in our decree that we signed with them. I think the only thing we gave away was our local performance standards review of that, and allowed the planning board to look at the letters that they receive, the state regulations that they abide by, and then provide them to local. So I think that's the crux of the argument that we're trying to deal with at this point. And I haven't heard from the state in terms of any further information that may be coming from them or notices of violations. I know that they've been out on several occasions because they've had some smell complaints, so they've addressed those. But I haven't seen anyone come across my desk yet. So that's where we are at this point.
So we don't know if DEP is taking any enforcement action?
We know the DEP, I know that the initial notice of violation went to the state attorney's office. And I know that they had 5 days respectfully to at least start a dialogue with the DEP. I'm not sure, I haven't heard that occurred, or any of that at this point, so I'm not sure what the state is in terms of their enforcement of their notices.
Anybody have any other questions? We're not going to be setting the tax rate tonight, correct?
That is correct. I just, we had a meeting on Thursday of last week with the town clerk, tax collector, and the deputy town clerk, tax collector, along with the assessor, just to try to find out where we were in this. For us, our assessor had some family issues that she had to deal with over the last several weeks that had taken some time away that she initially would have met our deadline of trying to set it tonight. So what I would like to do, she's indicated to me that we'll have the information by the 31st of this month, that we will be able to get that information all uploaded from the Vision computer to the Trio computer, so we can, all the bills and assessments will jive. And I would like to, if we can take some action tonight, to try to set up a meeting for Tuesday, September 5th, to set the rate. That will keep us on our timeline of making sure we get our tax bills to printed and to distributed before the September 10th deadline, so we don't have to move any of our notifications or lengthen that out in any way. So that's my goal. So I'd like to try to have something on Tuesday the 5th. We could be an early meeting. I don't know how you folks are. We could use it. We could hold it right at the town hall. Have the information there. We can put it in and set that rate.
Think about time.
6? Yeah, 6 o'clock, I would be okay with that.
Anybody else all right? 6 o'clock?
6?
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Make sure you send that
Yeah, a reminder.
Okay, old business, status of paved tax efforts seeking planning board approval.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, a bunch of the neighbors were here, along with their attorney, to express their thoughts relative to the consent agreement that we signed with Pavtech, and the fact that the 60-day time frame provided to him was sunsetting at that particular point. The thought process I got from the planning, from the Board of Selectmen that evening, was to reach out to Mr. Stilfen and have him attend your meeting this evening to lay out to you folks the status of his efforts to get his information all gathered and to provide it to the planning board so they can set a meeting and finish the review process for him. I know Mr. Stilfen's here this evening. I'm sure he may have some folks with him to sort of give you a flavor of where they are, the status of what they're doing, how things are coming, when do they expect to be back in front of the planning board?
For the record, I think we should note that we are in receipt of a letter from Attorney Bruce Reed on behalf of a number of the neighbors down there, from what I understand. I don't know whether Mr. Stolfen or his representative has seen that. And we also have a memo from addressed to Keith from Tad Redway, our town planner, giving us some indication of the conversations he's had with Jason Vaffiades and Mr. Stolfen regarding the progress he's making with respect to the conditional, I guess, a conditional use permit, is that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Stolfen, Jason?
Sure. Yeah, good evening, members of the Board of Selectmen. As you all know, Bill contacted us back in early July, and it's just the situation, it's the time of year and the economic climate that the one thing that we had a hard time finding someone to do was a boundary survey. So we've gone out, we picked out all the information we need. Frank Emery has finished that field work of the boundary survey, I think as of last Friday, and we should be getting that file back. So the application for the conditional use should go in, I just had a schedule here. We're hoping to turn that in sometime later, the week after Labor Day. And I know just the submission deadline to the planning board meets on September 14th, so I'm actually gonna talk to Tad, the town planner, and say, they meet twice a month, but typically it's administrative stuff on the second meeting, which is September 28th. And I'm gonna suggest to Tad that, 2 reasons, that if he could receive our application, have time to review it, and then with any comments, we could get together with him before the planning board takes action on it, that we could meet that September 28th meeting. So that would speed things up by a couple of weeks. Also, I believe Bill is going to be out of the country for the September 14th meeting. I think he'd like to be there.
Yeah, so I won't be back until the 20th.
So, which we don't require him to be there, but there may be questions that only he can answer, or sort of, if he agrees to certain things that are outside of the normal, if he, agrees to reduce any of the standards or make it more stringent for himself or anything. So, I just wanted you to know that we are working on it, and just, these emergency calls this time of year, it's hard to sort of get the ship turned around and put the attention on projects that like these that pop up, so.
Bruce, you have anything you want?
I appreciate that, Tom. I think I'm Bruce Reed on behalf of the residents of the Chip K Lane that you saw in my letter. Did everyone get a copy of my letter?
I did.
Okay. Keith, I thought you
I
emailed it.
thought I did too. My apologies. I'll make sure that they get it, but I thought I sent it to all of them.
Honestly, that bothers me a little bit. I really tried hard to get that in for a deadline. You told me in an email it was gonna go to everybody. It's important that they see this, Steve. Gosh, this was a 3-page letter. Tom, you've read it? You've seen it?
I have.
Okay, at least Mr. Labby's seen it. To me, it was important to have the timeline that goes with it, not just what we're concerned with in the last, year that you know about, because you entered into this consent decree, but also it goes back 17 years. So, if you'll allow some of my clients to speak, they may want to, but my point is, the consent decree doesn't say, gee, I need to go out of the country, it's a busy time of year, okay? Mr. Stolfen came before the board, apparently hat in hand. I wasn't party to those particular proceedings my clients were, and you decided to finally drop the gate and say, look, party's over here. This is, how much of the history you were privy to, I don't know, but we've laid it out now in writing for you. And you put teeth in the agreement, as you reported in the paper. I mean, you put some teeth in it. And it does say, shall. Once the 60 days comes and goes, he shall remove the offending equipment. So we're asking, and as I said in my letter, which I really hope that Mr. Du Bois and Ms. Hayes and Mr. Nettle get a chance to read here.
Is this the one that August 18th, Tom, is the date on it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Did you get it? Okay, sorry, Keith.
It's okay.
I just,
I've had you yell at me before, so it's okay.
I mean, in a different matter, you're right, yeah. Anyway, the timeline is important because of the length of time, and as I said in the letter, maybe a little dramatically, all right, but this is dramatic for my clients. Mr. Sullivan's running this operation every day. It's, oh, I've got to go out of the country, I can't find an engineer, I can't find a surveyor. Well, please, look at what the consent decree says. It says 60 days come and go, the trucks go. I mean, Jim Nagle said he's down there, make an inspection, with or without telling Mr. Stolpen, as it's allowed. And, you know, you are not in the business of putting people out of business. That was the quote that was in the paper. That's not what you do. You had an agreement, he's putting himself out of business here by not complying with the consent decree. And that's what it said. So, you're in a position to at least give us a breadcrumb here. I know we're gonna go through the planning board process. We're prepared to, you know, he's gotta prove to the planning board that this is a use that fits in this neighborhood. We think we're gonna have a very good case with the planning board to show this is just a wrong use. You know, I've heard, Dan, you've said occasionally, well, you know, he's probably gonna get his conditional use permit. That's not a fait accompli by any means, in our opinion. We think we got a lot of valid arguments to make before the planning board, but he has to go through the process. And the time has come. It's just, it's more than tired. You can sense the frustration. Some of the wording in my letter was a little strong, but my clients have strong feelings. I mean, this is time, not for us, you as selectmen putting a man out of business. This has been going on 17 years. We've shown you the picture of the tanker, which whether it was 8,000 gallons, 20,000, it was a fuel tanker sitting in the guy's yard. Okay, in a residential neighborhood. This is the kind of history we've got. We deserve to be the ones who are looked after here, not, oh, we don't want to hurt Mr. Stolpen. Well, what are you doing to the residents here? And, you know, we have audio and video evidence, trucks starting even before the permit that he doesn't have, you know, would allow him to do. So don't be afraid. I don't know what there is to be afraid of to say, look, Bill, if you want to take a vacation or, you know, be out of the country, well, fine, but you're not going to run your business. Why are you not? That's what the consent decree says. So we ask you to, you know, Arundel wants to be a business-friendly place. I totally get that. We're not asking you to be like this to everybody. Mr. Stolpen's not everybody. He has a long, long history that I really tried to lay out in the letter. And we just ask you to do the right thing.
Anybody else want to offer? Yes, Lynn?
I would like to, Lynn Howe.
I forgot to ask people to identify themselves.
Lynn Howe, 49 McTipley Road. To echo what Bruce had said, and Tom, you might remember, because I know you gave me the answers to my question, the first selectmen's meeting that I attended, and expressed a lot of frustration around the fact that the town even gave him 60 days after the very lengthy history of willful violations of the land use ordinances. And I know what you explained to me is that the reason we do consent agreements is to drive action. And we put a time frame in it to make sure that we get that action. So here we are, the consent agreement time period has come and gone, and I guess I look to you to do what you said the consent agreement's purpose was, which was to get action. And if the Board of Selectmen is not going to enforce the consent agreement, then it really just sends the message to any landowner in Arundel that says, do whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, because we might put something together that has teeth, but we're not willing to enforce it. And that's really frustrating as a property owner that is directly affected by whatever Mr. Stolpen does on or off his property, on his property rather. So I guess I look back to, I understood what you said. I didn't like it, in all honesty. I wanted it, when he was found in violation, I wanted him to have to live by the permit that he has. So what's really, really frustrating for me, and I'm going to guess I'm speaking for all of our neighbors, is the town is, by not enforcing the consent agreement, the town is allowing him to operate as if he has a contractor to yard permit, which is not a permitted use in our zone. So I guess I don't understand, and I would love to have someone explain to me why he is being allowed, with his long history of just doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants, regardless of what the town says, why he's being continued to be allowed beyond the consent agreement time period. It's not a permitted use, he's not completed it within the time frame, and as an abutter, or not a butter, as a landowner that's in close proximity, I find it unacceptable and infuriating. I didn't want 60 days in the beginning, but I understood, okay, this is what the town needs to do, this is what the town needs to do. But to have the town stay silent and allow him to continue to operate, he should be brought back to his original permit. He has not met the terms of the consent agreement, and whatever you do with the fines, I would encourage you, because that's an opportunity, but if you choose not to do that, that's your business. But I frankly think he should be held to the original permit that he has. It is not a permitted use in that zone, and until the planning board determines that that is a conditional use that fits within our zone, which I would argue that it doesn't, then I don't think he should be allowed to continue to operate as if it were. I mean, I wouldn't have bought a house where I did if I knew there was gonna be a contractor 2-yard right. I can hear his trucks, I can smell his trucks. It's disruptive to the neighborhood. We don't need to go over all the previous activities that have been on site that have caused great frustration and anger amongst many of us. But I ask you, please do what the intent of the consent agreement was. He has not abided by it, and you're past the 60 days, and I think you're sending a really bad message to other property owners if you don't hold him accountable and do what the consent agreement says. The other piece of it is, we're trying to market this town as a desirable place to live, and I have to say, it's not pleasant for property owners to wonder, gee, I wonder what's gonna happen in neighboring properties near me, and if there's land use ordinances that are supposed to prevent that from happening, but nothing is done, that also sends a bad message. So I ask you to think long and hard about it, and I ask you to think that we're all tax-paying, bless you, by the way. We're all tax-paying residents. We are directly affected by it. And again, it is not a permitted use in this zone. So I'm just really confused as to why that he is continuing beyond 60 days. Now it sounds like he may not get to the planning board to the end of the September. That's barring no further delays. And if his application is not complete for the planning board, for the long list that Bruce read through at the last planning board meeting that we attended, then it's going to kick it out even more. So where are we in this? Why aren't the land use ordinances supposed to protect property owners and people doing whatever they want and in zones that it's not permitted? So, we're a quiet residential rural neighborhood. This doesn't belong. It wasn't in there on purpose. So why is he being allowed to continue to operate? So that's all I wanted to share.
Stacy Bass, you've heard me. I think I don't want to repeat what Lynn has said, but I think at this point it becomes a matter of respect. That we stand here in front of you, and we've been standing here in front of you repeatedly since June, I think, and it feels like we're not being given any sort of audience. Like you're not hearing our concerns, and I've actually heard from someone who read some of the articles that Duke had written that it appears that the town is afraid to take any action. This was an unbiased party who read the articles and said, it sounds like the town is afraid to be perceived as being not business friendly. I would think you would not want to be perceived as not being resident friendly either. And you've got a gentleman here who was apparently bitten by a dog on the Eastern Trail. I mean, that seems like that would be not a great image for our town. And I think, as Lynn said, we're just really frustrated. We've played by every rule. We've done everything appropriately. We've gone through all the appropriate channels, and it feels like no one's listening to us.
And I'll add on to, I love Bruce Reed. We are paying Bruce Reed a lot of money to be here to defend us in our land use ordinances. And that's particularly frustrating to us that, we want to do it right, and we have a desired outcome that's critically important to us in the value of our properties. But it doesn't feel right that he's the one that's under consent agreement. He's the one that's violated long history of land use ordinances, and we're the ones that are having to pay to defend our right to live in a quiet neighborhood in accordance with the land use ordinances. it's not right.
You know, actually, thinking about what you and I talked about earlier this week, he has a great reputation for the work that he does. We're told, I mean, I have a dirt driveway, so I don't need any work, but people recommend him, and we certainly have no desire to impact his ability to run a successful business. It's simply, as Lynn has said, it's that little 5-acre parcel in the R4 district where this particular business doesn't belong. There are, you know, Route 1, there's, as Bruce mentioned, he owns land in other towns around here. Could this not function equally successfully somewhere other than this little accessed by a right-of-way piece of land? You know, is that the right place for this business? I mean, you know, truly, that is really the crux of what we're asking you and what we're asking the planning board to please opine on.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Dewey Guile. I live at 40 Mexican Road. I have a question. I'm curious, how many consent decrees has the town of Arundel at least put together and agreed to with other businesses? I know the Du Bois one, but how many others in the town how many other consent decrees have been given to other businesses in the town? It's a simple question.
I'm not sure I can answer that. We've done some consent decrees, non-business ones for setback violations, unintended setback violations for buildings, but I can't, other than a Du Bois, I can't recollect another consent.
Business, the one that I can think of.
Okay, so this would be, all right, so unless our memories come back, so this would be the second one that the town has put together. I'm an environmental consultant. A lot of my clients are Fortune 500 companies, oil companies like Chevron, International Paper, nuclear power plants. And I will tell you that when a consent decree is put together against these companies, the people who put it together really mean it. It's binding. If any of my clients violate it, if it's not a serious fine, it actually executes or enacts, you know, criminal charges for that sort of thing. It's a very serious thing. And so my point here, as a resident, is that your second consent decree that you collectively have put together, only the second one, you've put together a due date, and you just let it go. You almost pretended it didn't exist. I would argue that the board has probably lost credibility. Probably not with, you know, not with my neighbor Bill, but people around. Your only second consent decree, you're basically saying, oh, never mind, we didn't mean it. So think about that. Think about the implications of the message that sends. Is that, okay, we'll put together the consent decree, but if things get kind of up against the timeline, you guys back off. You just give in. And again, my point is, it's your only second consent decree.
I just remembered one more.
Okay.
That's
Okay. But yeah, I think you're understanding my point.
We've done few, correct.
Yeah. And so this is kind of a pretty big deal. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I do want to make a clarification.
Go ahead.
So my comment to Bruce was, if he meets the performance standards, he'll get his permit. I didn't say he was gonna automatically get his permit. If he meets the performance standards, he'll get his permit. You may argue those performance standards, that's your leisure, but my comment is that he's gonna automatically get his
No,
permit.
sorry.
I wanna make sure we're clear on that.
I didn't mean to
Thank
throw
you.
you under the bus there.
Anybody else?
I wouldn't mind speaking. I mean, I'd be the first to admit that I'm not well versed in the planning board side of town government. I don't have the ability to attend every meeting at every junction and every So that being said, this is also the first time that I've had the opportunity, we haven't heard from you yet, other than Jason, was it?
Yes.
So I myself wanted to hear from your side. But I also do respect the fact that they've been here for 4 meetings and we've heard their side of it. Leading into a question to Mr. Stilfen from me, I mean, it's obvious that you've had a site walk, you're aware of the fact that you're not of, you know, I'll call it proper contractor yard where you are. I mean, my question to you would be, until the planning board can review your application and maybe all the paperwork is submitted, do you have access to move your equipment until you return to the country, until the planning board can, I mean, do you have access to another piece of property? I mean, that to me would just show good faith or good effort from you saying, hey, look, I've submitted it. The planning board has my paperwork. They haven't had a chance to review it. I'm leaving the country. It's just a question to you. Do you have access to another piece of property to move the equipment until you get back?
I own wooded lot in Kennebunk, but I'm not gonna go start clearing a lot. You know, and I asked the town, and they kind of said, you know, don't worry until we get through all this paperwork. You know, I went to the planner, I went to code enforcer, and I talked, and we was at the last meeting at the planner. They told Mr. Reed, this could take a little while, because I told him I already had an engineer, which I did get hold of Jason, and they said this does take time. And they even said sometimes it could take up to a year. But I've been pushing this right along, and I've been bugging Jason, and I've been, you know, trying to do everything the town has. And then when it comes to that tanker, that was 2 years ago. That tanker was taken out as soon as we could take it down the road, it was posted. And I cut it up for junk. But when I did have it there, I had it tested at a place that does test all the tanks for oil and that, to make sure I didn't have any problems. But when the town asked me to move it, it was moved. I've done everything that the town has asked me. When they come over, the DEP come, they told me to get stump grindings. I did that the next day because my silk fence was, you know, getting old. So they just said, Bill, put stump grindings around it. I went and got a load, did that, and whatever the town has asked me, I have done. And I own 3 houses in this town too, and I pay my taxes every year when they're due. I try to do, you know, I don't try to have a hard time with my neighbors. I stay to myself, I go to work, like I said, 12, 13 hours a day. And you know that, Mr. Lavely, you do the same stuff. You guys work just as hard as we do. I'm just trying to make a living. I got 8 men that need jobs, and they got families.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. With respect, we've heard the "I've just got to make a living" speech a lot. For him to say, Mr. Stilfen, for you to come here and say, I do everything the town tells me to.
I do.
That they tell me to get a tanker that's stuck in the woods off my
It
property.
wasn't stuck in the woods.
Well, it's an
You
illegal.
should have been there to see it.
No, I started it, my fault. But my point is, for him to say to you guys, I do everything the town ever asked me to do, he's been caught at something. Once he's caught, then this is, I hope you can see through that argument, please. It's like the marijuana plants. Oh, did just what the town told me to do. Got rid of all the marijuana plants.
The town didn't say that.
Mr. Stilfen, let him finish.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's after he gets caught, this is the thing, and this is what we've heard, and that's what I tried to say in the letter. I'm not, I mean, I give Stacy credit. She said, look, we don't argue with the man's business. He's a good paving contractor by all accounts. That's fine. It's just the wrong place for it. And again, I just would rather the board not look at the man and feel so sympathetic for him. He's making a living. Where's the sympathy for the rest of the folks? I think some of you are starting to talk about this. Where's the sympathy for our side of this?
I mean, I stood here 2 weeks ago, and this is your file. from your town office, and there's 18 months of requests going back to Gifford saying, I need you to file your permit, I need you to file your permit, I need you to file your permit. Okay, you filed it, it's not complete. He operated almost 2 full years with no permit. I mean, this isn't me being a difficult neighbor, this is fact, state of logic, documented by your employees. We truly, he just did work for my neighbor's side, the driveway's beautiful. It's nothing against the ability for the man to make a living. It's that, again, I'll say it one more time, it's that it does not belong in this little, deathly quiet, isolated parcel of land. And I don't know what else we can say to ask you and the planning board to please, consider what we're trying to ask of you.
Yeah, he's been given fair warning, and I'm glad you went down the path, Mr. Neto, Selectman Neto, of asking the question. I mean, I'd almost rather you didn't. I'd almost rather you draw a bright line and say, look, done is done. But, I mean, that's a legitimate question to ask, and he's had fair warning. He's had time to plan for this. Geez, if I don't get this permit, well, the consent agreement doesn't say a year, it says 60 days. And if he wanted to make the argument, as he's now making, that I need a year here, the planning board process may take a year, that should all have been something you guys decided back when you signed the consent agreement. You considered it, you gave him 60 days. What is so difficult about saying to Mr. Stolfen, accept the long face you may get from him while he goes wherever he's going to go, overseas? I got 8 guys working for him. Well, the paving season's coming to an end if you want to just play that game. He said all summer to make money. If the sympathies are going to fall somewhere, how about the people who have kids going to school in the neighborhood, as opposed to the guy who's had a lot of fair warning? You got the authority tonight to say, this is what we're here for. We really like you to consider this, have a discussion about it, and say, whether you say you're sorry to him or not, whatever you want to say, done is done. Find a way to get this done. Or amend your consent agreement if you've got it. I mean, but we're done with excuses on his part and having to come back. You guys actually came to the point where you said 60 days is that's our deadline. And that's what we all relied on. All my clients rely on. And they're paying me money to be here. They've been here they've been coming to you for a long time without me. And finally they're like, hey, Bruce, what can we do here? We're getting no traction. So that's why I'm here. I just hope you can discuss this amongst yourselves. I don't think it's a hard thing. I don't know where the political fallout or whatever it might be. What's the harm in saying to Mr. Stolfen, here's the consent agreement. You get respect from the people in town doing this. Hey, sorry, but you signed this. Did he have a lawyer then? I don't know. You signed this. This is what it is. You have that authority to do that. You're not losing any face. I can't see where you lose face. You gain face doing that. But we'd like to see you do that tonight. We'd like to see you actually say tonight, take a vote. We've looked at this, we're going to discuss it, and your 60 days is up. Now you got to stop your operation, and whether you put the fines on, again, as Lynn said, that's up to you. It's in there. I mean, at some point, this board had to be convinced this is a serious enough matter to put teeth in the agreement. You did, and now, we're all here asking you to please use them.
I have one other point, and maybe this kind of puts it all in perspective. If I may speak one more time. Again, being an environmental consultant, I've worked on a lot of Superfund sites where there's been a spill. What you're going through, or work the town's going through with Du Bois, is a prime example. For me, the final straw was when we discovered the bulk, semi-tanker was back there, and apparently it had been there for quite a while. And just bear with me here for a minute, and I think you'll understand where, for me, it finally was the last straw. So the tanker was in, back of the woods. It was, where he cleared some stuff out right up next to our property. There's no spill containment plan. There's no spill prevention plan. And I'm sure the tanker was in good shape. Like Bill said, he probably had it inspected. It's very good. A case in point, Dead River last year, who goes through all the hoops not to have a spill, they had a spill, I believe it was last summer. I think remember the vacuum trucks were up there. This was the one up at Biddeford, up at the gas station, right across from the line. And they had a major spill from their fuel tanks or whatever. And my point is that accidents happen. And so for the tanker to be there that long, we could have had a nasty, severe thunderstorm or whatever. Something could have failed with the tanker. The point is, had all that volume of oil spilled out without Bill's knowledge, it would have then, there's a vernal pond wet area that's between my property and his. And again, you have to trust me, I'm in the business. Is that oil would eventually, because it rose up so high, there is a slight vernal brook that goes into Charlie Bassett's pond. And had that not been found, that oil, at the same time, going through our property and the other abutting properties, that would have gotten into his pond. His pond then drains into the brook that then leads into the Kennebunk River. And by the time a spill like that has happened, it's too late. And Bill, I presume Bill has, insurance for that sort of thing. But the one thing that insurance companies won't pay for is if a tanker like that is put there against environmental laws or what have you. And I know for a fact, knowing DEP laws like I do, that was not supposed to be there. So if it spilled, my worry was his insurance company would pay for it. And the way the environmental laws work, it then becomes our responsibility because that oil gets onto our property. So then our only recourse would be to sue Bill, his company, but if he didn't have enough money because the insurance company doesn't pay him it, we would just simply get in line with everybody else. And then the other thing is our property would have then had a marker with EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, that our property was subject to a major spill. So what am I getting at? I probably did Bill a huge favor by telling Jim, this tanker's here, he's got to get it out before we have a spill. But if we had had a spill, it would have been financially catastrophic, not only to him, but everybody around us. And then that's when I lost faith in him to operate his business, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, in I guess a responsible manner, consider whatever. That was the final straw for me. Because had we had a spill, it would have been. And so it's very hard for me as an environmental consultant to know that this is going on, there's nothing I can do about it. So that's where I have finally drawn the line. I just can't trust him to operate his business in a responsible manner.
Or within
That's
the
it.
ordinance, I think, is probably what you meant to say. The only other thing I'd like to add to is, like, I know he's hardworking, I know that. We know his trucks start before 7 a.m. I don't know what
They
time
do
he gets
not.
home. But we actually have video evidence of it. He can dispute it all he wants. But he's not the only hardworking person in this room. And I work a lot of hours, I just don't talk about it. I've worked very hard, I know Dewey and Stacy do, and everybody on our road works really hard as well to take care of our families. Me in particular, I have 2 kids in high school. I need to build, I've been working hard to build equity in my house so I can leverage it to pay for college in a couple of years. And the reason that becomes so important is that he has shown the town and us that all these years he is very happy to live outside of the land use ordinance, outside of permits. It started with no permit, and it took a while for when Dewey and Stacy engaged another attorney to force him to get a permit. And then he's been living outside of that permit. He had a marijuana operation that wasn't permitted. He had the oil tanker truck that wasn't permitted. I know it's not there anymore, but my point is, he has had long history of not showing any respect for the town's land use ordinances. And he is, again, living outside that permit, and if the consent agreement is not enforced, you're allowing him to do that, to continue on with that. And I just, it's frustrating to hear, we're not attacking him personally, I know he works hard, but so do I. And so does Stacy, so does Dewey, so do all of our neighbors. So I don't find that as a valid argument to find sympathy for him, because well, I don't stand up here and talk about how many hours I work and what I have on my plate and how responsible I am and what my goals are and what I am held accountable for. We work hard, just the same as he does.
And I know we've taken a lot of your time. I can't hear one more time that those trucks don't start before 7 o'clock without showing somebody something. Can't do it. Where do you, last weekend. So this is my iPad. This is a file from my mudroom inside my home. 650.
Is that from your bathroom?
This is from the mudroom,
Where's
so
my room?
basically the same distance.
It's that loud.
It's date stamped, 6:50 a.m. He's told me several times that I'm not right. I mean, I can't stand here again and be told that I'm not correct. I filmed my clock that shows it's 6:50. It's really boring because you're just looking at bushes, but and I have others that are later in the morning, but the level of the noise, I mean, in my house, we had this conversation last time, I'm not gonna do it again. But I can't be told again that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mr. Tillman, did you want to add anything to the discussion?
No, I'm just gonna say, I sit there with my clock too every morning, and it comes 6:57. I'll say, okay, you know, I got men standing there waiting to go to work. Okay, you can go out, start your trucks. You know, it's like I gotta have a time clock for my trucks to be started in the morning.
But that's why that business doesn't belong here.
No, but I try to do what the town asked me not to start until 7, so I wait. And it said before, when in the wintertime, like in the fall, November, things are cold, they said I could start them a little bit earlier.
Who said that?
Whoa. I'm not talking to you.
Please, Mr.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
When we went back in 2003, they said, Bill, we know it's cold in the morning. And they said, 15 minutes isn't gonna matter here or there.
Okay.
So, in the fall, late fall, I started them all the time, just about 6:45. The diesel trucks, they gotta warm up, and I don't even leave there usually until 7:15. And Matt here, that lives in front of me, he leaves to go to work before 7. How many times have you seen me pull out in front of you?
You leave at 7 when I'm leaving.
I wait to make sure.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If the town gave permission for him to start his trucks before 7, why would the permit say 7 a.m.? It is just another reason why that business does not belong in our
I said in the
neighborhood.
fall time, you know, November.
It should be in writing, right? It should be, he should be required to live by the terms of the permit.
I would just add, you know, I certainly feel for everybody involved here, and, you know, typically we don't get in these sticky situations, but, I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, the planning board will deal with the ordinance issues and the upholding the land use ordinance. And it seems to me like there's a lot of enforcement sort of things that are, and that's always the stickler in the process is, you know, your ordinances are only as good as how cleanly the enforcement happens. So, and I know Bill's been working with the code enforcement officer, and I know that probably the butters have been going. I just want to throw that out there that you know, it's tough for different boards to make decisions. You know, when a lot of these things sound like enforcement issues, and the discussion about the tanks and everything. I mean, my understanding is we went out and surveyed, there's certainly no materials being kept on site now, so that issue has been taken care of as well, so just wanted to add that.
I have a question for Jason. You said your work is finished, and the survey has been finished?
No, we're waiting on the boundary survey, so.
We're waiting on the
yeah,
boundary survey?
We're not licensed boundary surveyors, so I wouldn't feel comfortable locating his pins and then verifying setbacks and everything, so, and part of your ordinance requires a licensed boundary survey to do that, so. Typically, that's the first thing you get, but with everybody's schedules, I had to reach out to the 5th surveyor that could get in there, so that's the last piece that's coming in, but it should have been the first piece.
Is that coming in this week immediately?
As soon as the surveyor gets his field work is done, he has to finish a deep research and put it on paper.
Can you impress on him the importance of having this immediately, because that information needs to get before the planner,
Yes.
and the planner needs to assure that that is complete.
Yep, so right, you put
Before
in the
it even goes
application.
to the planning board.
Yes.
That could get to the planning board yesterday, would it be fast enough?
Exactly, and that's, he knows, and I pulled him off another job to get him over here. Yeah.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. He's now gone on record, we're being taped here, saying somebody at the town hall told him, go ahead, start at 6:45. That's a concern. How do you do that?
Agreed. Anything else, David?
I was at a town meeting when I heard him say, 10 minutes is good, you won't need trucks up, 6:50 start and leave at 7. I heard him say it when I was at one meeting.
Who was that, man?
I don't know the guy's name, but I was at, it was at the old library before they rebuilt the school. I don't remember whose name it was that said it, but I did hear it.
Did you want to say something?
I just more or less want to echo what I said earlier. I mean, I do have a soft spot for small business. I'm one myself. I really am. I know how hard you're working. I do the same thing day in, day out. My only request would be, it's obvious that we are not compliant, and I'm just trying to make both parties happy. I just really wish you could find another place until the planning board could review it. That's all I'm asking. If you say there's just no other options, I just...
Where am I gonna put them?
That was just a question I asked you. I was hoping that you,
I
a
don't,
friend that had
I
a
don't-
kid,
I don't keep the old trucks there. I can't ask him to keep putting my other stuff there. You don't have enough room. I'm lucky he lets me do that. And then we've been gone, over there on Route 1 for quite a while.
you said you have 3 other properties in Arundel. Are there any in any other districts?
They're all right on the Senate Road. I mean, if you want me to put them on the Senate Road, it's on the other side of my chip gate land. I can do that, I got a field there, but I don't want, I'm in the woods. Nobody can see me. And if I put them in a field over there, everybody on Route 1, on the Senate Road, is gonna see it all lined up in the field. And I rent that house, but I know the paralegal that rents it, I can put them there, but I can't understand.
Is it more secluded? I'm just looking at
No.
all our options. I'm just looking
No,
at...
I didn't want it. It's got a nice little field there, and I don't want to ever disrupt that. There's not many fields left around here.
Have you looked into renting space anywhere?
No, I haven't.
Well, let me just state that when Lynn described when this first came before the board, and I explained to her that maybe not the policy, but at least the inclination of this board is to work with people when we get a violation issue in front of us. We don't necessarily simply want to send out notices of violation and shut people down. In fact, we have a policy in place that kind of says that at this point in time. However, we negotiated something with you. We entered into an agreement with you. I'm concerned that if we don't enforce this agreement, that others should be getting into any other consent agreements, and we have one hanging out there right now. We've got 2 hanging out there right now that are problems for us. If we don't enforce this one, those other folks are gonna come back in here and ask us to not enforce the agreement we made with them. I just don't know how we get around that. That's an argument that is compelling to me. That we need to, once we cut a deal with somebody, we've given you a break, and I understand what Jason is saying about the time of year and the lack of professional help you can get to get your permit in place, but we made a deal, we made an agreement. I think we need to enforce the agreement. That's my opinion.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
When we went to the last, at the fire department, with the planning board, they all stood up, Bruce stood up, and the board, they said, if this isn't up in 60 days, we want that gone. And they spoke up at the planning board and said, this could take a little longer than 60 days. It could take up to a year. But I didn't want to see this go for no year. and I didn't wanna see you. I called Jason every other day there for a little while. I said, I gotta have this done. And he got on that, and I started it the day after the fire department. I mean, before we got there, the week before, we was at there. And I've been up to the town hall, talking to Jim, talking to everybody up there, saying we're moving this along, it's pushing, and we're trying. You know, it's just like if Mr. Reed goes to court, he gets continuance. That can go on for 2 months. It's no different than anybody else going to court. That can be continued for months. I'm not trying to continue this for months. I've been trying to get this done since day one.
I go to court too, Mr. Stephen.
I
I stand in front of
understand.
judges on occasion, and if
Yeah.
I haven't done things on time, they don't give me a continuance. There's consequences to that. Okay? And there's a consequence here, at least for me. Others will have different opinions, I'm sure.
What are our options?
Our option, it seems to me, is that we vote to have our code enforcement officer enforce the terms of the consent decree, or we don't.
Can we continue it?
You can take no action. That's the essentially saying we're not enforcing, for me.
I mean, I have to agree with Tom. We have 2 other pending consent agreements. And I just feel as if the other 2, one in particular, to me, is of utmost importance. And if we lay the path here, then I think we have to throw our hands up on all 3. I mean, it's-
When was our time up? What was the date the time was up?
August
Consent
13th, I
agreement.
believe.
Yeah, there was 60 days from the date that we signed.
Maybe we signed it.
August.
And I went up to the town and told them it was gonna be behind before it even happened. And, you know, they led me on the way saying that, you know, Bill, you're in progress. You know, don't worry. You know, I worry. I wanna sleep at night too.
Do you remember when we signed or
I
when?
think it was July 13th.
No, June.
What was the end of the?
It was August 13th.
August 13th?
How many pieces of equipment do you have there right now?
I got 3 dump trucks and a couple of low beds, table and trailer.
Do you have a valid permit for 2 trucks
I got a permit for 2 trucks and 2 trailers.
Is that permit valid today?
Yeah,
Do you got proof of that?
well, because that's what they said, if I didn't make the requirements for this, they said I'd have to go back to my old permit. I mean, I got 2 trucks that aren't there right now, Mr. Levy. One hauls for pipe, and the other one, 2 of my drivers take them home. So I'm not that far out, only out of whack. It's in the wintertime, I leave everything there. I take 3 trucks to work. Nelson's taking his home with him for 2 years. And the other one goes home with the other driver that hauls for pipe when they need him. Or else I call him when I need him and say, meet me on the job. If you went over there tomorrow, you'll see 2 trucks. And that's what my permit calls for. So I don't understand until we go through all this, I'm at what I'm supposed to have with my 2 trucks.
Well, this consent agreement says that the code enforcement officer is gonna go down there and decide whether you are in compliance or not.
Right, he can.
Right. That's what it says. So, you send him down and he finds you out of compliance, then
He can go down, they know what I've got there, they've all seen it.
okay.
They all walked it, all my neighbors.
He has a permit for 2 trucks and 2 trailers. He doesn't have a permit at all
Yeah, he has a
Yeah, I do.
2003
now.
conditional,
2003.
conditional use permit to allow him to have certain
Two
items on site.
trucks and 2 trailers.
Right, this, he's going after an expansion to his business at that
Right.
location, the contractor yard two application.
Right.
So he wants to be able to provide, he's got oil trucks too. That was
But the oil trucks aren't there either.
Yeah, but they were there during the winter time, correct?
Were they? No.
They weren't there this
No.
winter?
Yes, they were, you
I-
signed an agreement that,
They weren't there this winter because the person, you can go down and talk to the person where I keep them.
I'm not blind.
They go in and,
Stacy, they don't go back and forth.
I'm sorry, I'm terribly sorry.
I know you're upset, it's fine. It just says you agree to remove any and all heavy trucks and related equipment located on the property, including but not limited to fuel delivery trucks, dump trucks, shipping containers, tractor trailers, and other related materials. That's what you said. That's what you agreed to.
I've got containers there, which has some little bit of equipment, and I got my personal stuff, which they looked at them and see. I got my Christmas tree in there, I got other things, you know, lawn stuff, tractor. I do have one sidewalk paver in it. I mean, the containers,
A few years ago.
I'm just reading what the agreement says.
no, I understand.
Does it, but does the agreement, does that go against his existing permit?
It says here that he agrees to remove any and all heavy trucks and related equipment located on the property, including not limited to fuel delivery trucks, which I understand you're saying aren't there
They
anymore.
aren't there.
Dump trucks, which apparently are there.
Yeah,
Shipping containers,
yeah, I got shipping containers.
tractor trailers, and other related materials.
I don't have, I
That's
have a
what we-
trailer.
That's the agreement we made.
No, I have a trailer, not a tractor.
Okay. And if, the last part of it says that, any additional purpose, any and all additional personal property does not, in the opinion of the code enforcement, comply with the terms of the ordinance and the 2003 permit.
Okay, so the 2003 permit allows him 2 trucks and 2 trailers.
Whatever it says, he can have that.
That's kind of what I was getting at,
Yeah.
the question, wasn't that 2003 permit allowed? If he's at that 2003 permit now,
I'm not quite
No.
sure, I
Then-
don't recall.
You must have it in that, do you have it in that packet?
It's in front of Tom.
yeah.
There must be a copy of that 2003 document.
Okay, the trucks. No more than 2 dump trucks with trailers may be parked on the property. Vehicles must be cleaned on the job site and not be cleaned on the property. And 7 o'clock start time and
yeah, right here.
so on and so forth.
Trucks may be allowed to warm up and idle for no more than 15
Right.
minutes. Employees may not arrive before 7 AM. Vehicles must be cleaned at the job site and may not be cleaned on the property, and then 2 dump trucks and trailers may be parked on the property.
So that's all he can have there, 2 dump trucks, 2 trailers.
That's it.
How do you decide for that between the consent agreement and his permit? How do you break that down?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Phil.
The consent agreement says no trucks at all.
Except it's in compliance with the 2003 permit.
Okay, so if we have him move everything, we're violating his permit.
No,
So will we know?
he just has to remove everything but 2 dump trucks with trailer.
Okay,
That's what can stay on the property.
2 trailers and 2 trucks can stay.
No more than 2 dump trucks with trailers may be parked on the property.
So the storage containers have to go,
Yep.
Anything other than 2 trucks and 2 trailers
Right. Shipping
has
containers.
to go according to that agreement.
Correct.
so your application now is to expand that.
Right,
That's the point of this.
right. And then when I was running behind with Jason and the engineer, I went up to the town office and explained and to everybody, and they said, Bill, you're working on it. Don't worry about it. We are working, you know. It's like anything. Try to find a carpenter today and say you want him there in 2 months. You're not gonna get him in 2 months. People are backed up. My daughter's foundation has been in the ground for that, and she's not gonna get a carpenter over there until December.
Does he have to have a permit to move those trailers, the storage trailers on his property?
No idea.
And they're portable. They're just like the pods. I don't understand what, you know, everybody in the neighborhood rents a pod and puts it in the yard.
Most people store furniture in them until they move
I
in the
got
house.
furniture in mine.
We'll put it in the house and get rid of the storage containers.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, there's no motion we can make.
Jim says you're working on it pretty regular.
How do we,
Well, my concern obviously is the vehicle starting before 7 o'clock a.m. Right? I mean, that clearly violates what was told in here, and I guess to me, we have to send Jim out there to see if he's in compliance, to make sure that he's in compliance with that 2003 permit. And if he's in compliance with that 2003 permit and he doesn't start his trucks before 7 a.m., then, yeah, he doesn't have his permit yet from the town, but that, he's in compliance with everything that he needs to be.
Correct, with his contractor, his permit that he received in
Right.
2003.
Right.
And the agreement, that's what it says.
In the agreement. And I would check with Jim to see about having those storage trailers on the property, if he needs a permit for that. If not, maybe they could be moved to one of your other property. Set them in the field. Until you
They
get,
better look at them right on Senate Road.
yeah, until you
You
get.
know,
your
there's
permit
not one of
first.
these people in this room that can see any of my property by looking through the woods. And Dewey has to really stretch his neck out there to see across. But if you
that's-
want me to put it over on the Senate Road in front of everybody and make it look like a pigsty, I don't live like that. They've walked my property, they know what it looks like. I keep up with my yard.
Well, check with Jim first, because you may not need a permit to put those there because you're storing household products in them, but you may. Check with Jim. He'll know. If not, then I
I'm
think,
with Selectman Galen in terms of what you need to do tonight.
yeah.
Right now, we have provided him the flexibility to continue to have that stuff there as long as he continues to make his good faith effort with the planning board, having his people to get this work done. However, what Tom was talking about tonight, you can take a vote and have us exercise the letter of the consent decree. That's your option. If you do that, then I will instruct the CEO to
But
do
is
that.
he violating the consent decree, with the exception of not getting his permit yet for contractor yard 2, he's in compliance with
It's
his
2003.
2003.
No,
No, he's
well, he's
not.
not right now. No, because he's got information, he's got material and equipment on there that goes beyond his 2003 permit at this stage.
do you agree with that, Bill? I mean, you're
Yes.
over and above your 2003.
Yes.
Just because of those, the trailers?
Well, whatever.
Whatever.
I'd have to look, have Jim look at that, go down and take a look at it. He would talk with Bill a little bit more as to how we're gonna remedy that, if that's what you decide to do this evening.
I have a box trailer there, no semi-truck, a box trailer, and I've got steps that walk up to it. I keep generator in it, a couple of them. I keep post hole diggers, you know, hand tools, stuff like that. It makes it easy, all in the parking lot, and I'm 800, something, 900 feet off the road. No one can even see up there. I mean, it's all trees, you can ask the engineer. I mean, I can't understand the town want me to take my stuff that's out there and park it right on the Senate Road on my other property, and it's right out, I don't want I'm not gonna say this, but I don't want my property looking like some of the other places on Senate Road. You know,
You may find, though, that that storage container can't be in that district. I mean, it's a permanent fixture, you know what I mean?
no, it's not, it's portable.
I know, but you have stairs going up to it.
No, that's it, yeah, and it's still on the wheels. If I have to, I'll register it.
I mean, that might be one of the conditions, I don't.
Can he, if we do these removal storage trailers, can he put them on another lot in a longer without a permit?
Well, I think we're going beyond what you need to do. I mean, if you guys took a vote tonight and said he needs to abide by his 2003 conditional use permit, I'll instruct the CEO to work with him in order to make that happen. You know, he may not, as you say, he may not be able to move that to another place on Senate Road and be legal. So that will be something that we'll have to work with Jim on. If that's what you decide.
Well, Mr. Chairman, again, a little,
Here's my comments to the board. In retrospect, I think that when we signed the consent agreement, and I think there was a comment that was made that, you know, the 60 days doesn't give the planning board a whole lot of time. I think the 60 days was a little bit short coming from, you know, past planning board member. But I look at what he's done and, you know, I see action. I see something that's moving forward, right? I mean, he's gone through the steps. Yeah, it may have taken a little bit longer, but again, like Jason mentioned earlier, it's hard to get somebody at the spur of the moment. You know, everybody's busy now. There's a lot of stuff going on. From my perspective, if he's to the 2003 permit, then I say we let that go through. We let this process go through its course. I don't think we can do anything if he's at the 2003 permit, if it states that in the consent agreement.
So all we'd have to do is vote to enforce the provisions of the consent agreement. Period.
Right.
I mean, if he's in compliance with 2003, it's a home run. He's fine. Sorry, folks, but that's the way it
But
is.
he just told you he wasn't.
Well, I understand that, but maybe he could come into compliance, okay?
Right.
But that's,
And
either that or we take no action.
I will make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to enforce, have the CEO enforce the consent agreement of July, what's the date of that again?
August 13th was the deadline.
No, the agreement's dated.
June 13th.
June 13th? Is there a second on it?
Second.
The motion is to have the code enforcement officer enforce the provisions of the June 13th, 2017 conditional consent agreement.
Yes.
Any further discussion, folks? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay. Stacy, why don't you stand? Okay, the whole business, the Gilmore Field application permits. I guess we're just looking to approve that, is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Right, the rec directors at the last meeting, the board requested some additional information on it. She's provided that on this application. I think it meets everything that you've asked done. Yes. I think I sent it earlier, initially earlier, but I emailed it to you and I gave you a hard copy tonight.
So some of the fees are subject to review by entities listed in front.
Yeah, you went there. It more or less was a discussion on, like, children,
Right, that
baseball.
adult baseball, softball teams.
Yes. So we pointed it out to Jim that, like, let's say, somebody wanted to get married on Gillian Field or something, so it would have to come for us. And then everybody on the front of that application, come up with a fee. We weren't just gonna set like a set fee for everybody. We were trying to keep it kind of maybe cheap for the kids, but the ability to.
The only problem with that is, you know, you get into the subjective stuff. You know, you're hitting somebody with $50, and somebody comes in and says, "Oh, you're 100." Well, what's the difference? I mean, I guess you could have some differences depending upon the activity. I understand that, but it always troubles me when you don't have objective standards of some sort.
And could you put in something like that, like $25 to $100?
Don't let him talk you into it.
I was told to be like,
Yeah.
because I wanted a set fee, or a couple of different fees, but I've seen it before, well, how come you only charge them 50, you wanna charge us 200?
Well, it says that,
Finding it right now,
It's
but
on-
there was another town,
Oh, that's,
a
no, that's-
bunch of different fees.
yeah, that's the fees
That's
for
the,
your
That's
street
for
vendors.
street vendors.
We'll talk about that later.
All right.
and it does say the fees will be
My mistake.
based on the type of use, potential for wear and tear and damage to the field. So those criteria could very well be used to determine the fee.
And it was also, is this a non-profit organization or a for-profit organization?
I don't want to make a big deal of it. I mean, you know, I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of applications to use the fee on that.
Well, I think if we do, if we have a wedding, then we may at that point have to establish the fees that you
Yeah.
approve.
Mhm.
And then once the fees are approved, then you can implement the fee.
Yeah.
I would guess if we got a consensus among everybody here as to what the appropriate fee is, then that's probably,
It more or less was driven too, where Jen had mentioned that a few years back, a professional or a semi-pro football team
Right.
wanted, I mean, those guys would destroy that field where a little league
Right.
kids team wouldn't, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I just wanted the ability to,
Yeah, say no.
So, as time goes on, what, if we, let's say a wedding comes in and we say, okay, $100 for a wedding. To me, somewhere, I don't know if we can do it here or in our ordinance, but to me, that ought to be documented, so down the road, we charge that same amount.
Well,
Something else comes in.
you'd be establishing a precedent.
President, right, and I guess if we can agree to that, then each time, if a nonprofit group comes in, and we come up with a date, if a for-profit, not date, we come up with a fee, if a for-profit comes in, we, you know, that's kind of what I was looking for, some
Yeah.
consistency with that.
As soon as you accept that fee, then I will put the list down, and every time it comes up, then I would have that list in front of you with that fee schedule on it.
I don't wanna get into a discussion, oh geez, 3 years ago, you know,
Right.
these guys, and how come you're charging me this much?
Right.
We don't.
A for-profit entity ought to pay a little bit more than a charity thing or a little
Oh, I agree.
league thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, yeah.
So we don't want to set one fee for everything.
no, we wouldn't. I mean, the list would be longer, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that Jason's trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I need a motion to approve the application.
Second, yeah.
All in favor? Somebody wants to have a wedding, get it in the field.
Then we bring in alcohol.
All the alcohol. Yeah. Okay, I think we already have something that says no alcohol on town property.
Okay, new business, we need to establish a special town meeting date.
Correct. The planning board has exercised their abilities to conduct a public hearing and look over 2 proposed ordinance changes for campgrounds, put any equestrian statements. They've provided in the information I gave tonight, I've provided you the changes that they're proposing after the public hearings. And then now it's up to you to establish a date that you would hold a town meeting in order to vote on these ordinance changes. If you're going to do it, my suggestion would be to hold that special town meeting at your business meeting on September 11th. We can advertise that, we can get out the necessary information to the public per our ordinance, and provide the mailers and have people show up here. So that would be it. If you decide not to do it, then we'll hold off, we'll wait, and we'll make a decision later on. If in fact we got anything else that comes up that requires a special town meeting. I'm not thinking of any that are coming up. I think what's pushing this more is the campground ordinance provision part of it, to ensure that all our campgrounds fall within the same guidelines.
I was at the planning board meeting when, what's his name, Rick Light was there with Bentley, and there was some of the equestrian folks there, and except for a couple of words that Rick Light would have liked to have changed, but they agreed that everybody thought that it was pretty good the way it is, and agreed to let it go that way. And then Bentley's people are going to ask at a later date to have, I think there was 2 or 3 words on the campground thing that they'd like to have changed, but planning board members said, if you try to do that now, you're not gonna make a special town meeting. I said, we'll let it be as is, and we'll ask for a little change.
So they'll go back to the planning board after
Yeah,
the
go back to the planning board later. I should have noted what the words were, but I didn't. I didn't.
It had to do with,
2 words that
it had to do with, not macho homes,
park
but, park
models.
models. Park models.
They wanted park models added, and there was something about the wheels. The
But we
wheels
stay
have-
on, or?
The wheels can come off, but they have to stay with the trailer.
Yeah, I think this ordinance.
The equestrian folks thought that what was written was acceptable.
Yeah, if you move this forward and vote to have a special town meeting on the 11th, I will ensure that the planning board or members of the planning board are there to explain if there are any issues that come up in reference to the changes that are being proposed.
Does that leave you enough time for advertising?
I believe it does, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing else that we can add on, huh? Ain't that a special town meeting for 3 items like this?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with a September 11th special town meeting for the proposed amendments to Wonderly land use ordinance for campgrounds and the equestrian performance standards.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Okay,
Can I alter the agenda a little bit?
go ahead.
I don't know if everybody's met Emily, but she's the new part-time town clerk. She has to leave right now for the kids, but,
Kids.
huh? I am familiar with her, yeah.
She's sitting up there and I'm
Some
going,
days
I've
you
seen
didn't.
her somewhere
Welcome.
before.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah.
She's been doing a wonderful job too, by the way. So it's great. Yeah, a
Yeah, I
little
told her-
surprised to see her tonight, but
I told her if she had a problem not to complain to the selectmen. Yeah.
No, I definitely won't.
Yeah.
Good. There you
Thank you,
go.
Emily. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Dan wants to discuss street vendor fees.
yeah, Dan was the one that made the proposal, so I did some more legwork and come together, and obviously it's just for discussion purposes. I'm not looking for you guys to establish any fees this evening. I think that you're going to have, or, once the planning board starts working on the street vendor ordinance and maybe some modifications to it, you're gonna wanna firm up the fees. But what surprised me on the fee structure was that it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that kind of interesting, all the way from $500 for the year down to, $50 for a
What are
permit.
these other numbers? $62 for 3 days.
Yeah.
$217.
Right. Yeah, I saw those, I thought it was kind of interesting.
56 in-state.
So Kennebunk, they charge you $50 to file the application, and then it's $500 for the permit.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't see anything for Kennebunk Court, so I'm not quite sure if they have a lot of street vendors down
I don't
there.
think so.
You know, I get Biddeford and obviously Kennebunk. I got York and Kittery that are around us. As we get further off the coast, we don't see as many of those permits being applied or fees applied to them. So that was the other thing that I noticed.
You have a different number now for work.
And I think, Dan, when you were looking at it initially, you were looking at perhaps a fee that would be something for the season, and then one that if somebody wanted to go a couple, 2 or 3 days, and have a license, that there would be a different fee established for that.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that I heard really was from local businesses that, gee, you know, I come in, I pay taxes, these guys come in and they make a profit, don't pay no taxes.
Right.
Right, and it's a valid point, but I think the planning board was supposed to work on getting some local businesses to have input from them and see what their thoughts are. Because there are some that say, yeah, I don't care, there are some that have that, and, you know, I kind of agree. I mean, I don't want them coming in here with making a profit and not contributing at all to the town, so we should definitely set a fee, so. And whether we want to wait for the planning board to do their stuff.
Well, I think my next move would be to probably come up with some recommendations as to what I think that would be an appropriate fee for a seasonal fee, 3-day fee, maybe a 1-day fee for those special events. And make those proposals to you based on some of the information that I have here now. And then you can have, that would be a good discussion point. At that point, you can say to me, you know, you're a little low, or you're not high enough, or whatever, but at least to give you something to talk about. Does that sound like a reasonable?
Sounds like a way to go.
Sure.
Okay.
Right now, we're stuck with $100 regardless.
That's right.
Yeah.
You are.
And when we establish those fees, does that have to go to town vote?
An ordinance, yeah.
Yeah.
Although if the planning board is gonna put something in place, we're probably gonna wanna revoke our ordinance.
Right.
Yeah,
The big
exactly.
competing provisions out
Right,
there.
Right.
yeah, that's kind of what I
Yeah.
saw.
Right.
was, you know,
They'd have to work together. You know,
Yeah.
if they put something together, then you'd want to request a rescind it.
Yeah.
rescind it and put the fee in,
Right.
replace it with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, I'll work up some numbers that I think
Sure.
may work for you.
Okay, we've got payroll and payable warrants that need to be approved.
Second.
All in favor? Any other business, folks?
Nada.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion been made, second to adjourn, all in favor? You're out.
I'll fight the go.
Mhm.